the fun enjoyment about camaraderie is I want to be that spark to other people, and when we get in good product, hit the pause button and be like, hey, you all need to check this out,
Yeah.
I think that needs to happen more often. It happened earlier in my career, that chefs would do that. And it's long lasting, right? So remembering that, kind of hitting the pause button every once in a while, is great.
Good to meet you, man.
Yeah, same.
I don't think I've done a show where I haven't met the person ahead of time. Usually, I know cool. them very well. So we're not only meeting for the first time, but also doing a podcast for the first time. So
well, I think each of us know quite a few people, and it's probably strange we haven't met. So yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of similarities there, or common threads. You also, by the way, did like the reverse Alex Tupac, which I thought is interesting.
Well, I mean, Alex kind of did the same. I mean, he was Savory before. So he worked at Clio, and he did like an internship at Clio. He was Savory. He worked at True in Chicago right before me.
Yeah.
He was the fish cook. And when I started at True, when I was like 20 or 21, and this was in 2000 or 2001, like he had just left, and they all called him Boston. They're like, oh, Boston this, Boston that. Like Boston would order pizza and have it in the dry storage. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And then when I left True, I thought about moving back to Boston. I did a stage at Clio, and he was the pastry chef. And
so funny.
And we knew a lot of the same people from True and Chicago. And then, of course, like he ended up going back to do Alinea and stuff. But
maybe it's something in the Boston water that does it.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, it's I know we haven't met before, but obviously we have a lot of we have a lot of the same background, and I'm stoked to chat with you today. First of all, congrats, man, on Camaraderie.
Thank you.
It's been like a week or so it's been open?
Yeah, it's we just finished our second week.
It's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I remember the first restaurant of mine that I opened, I don't think I slept more than like 2 hours for the first 6 months. So I'm glad you're on appreciate you getting a call with me today.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a 2-month-old too.
Jeez. So. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's your first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, okay, we'll talk about that as well. Well, anyway, I mean, look, you have a terrible pedigree. It's True, look, wow, Bistro Devon, L'Atelier de Joel Robuchon, LTO, Cortone, Cezanne. I mean, it's Quince, Cotone. I mean, it's pretty insane. So no lack of experience. I did, I want to dig into, obviously, the new restaurant. We'll talk about that a bunch. But because I don't know you, I want to get to know a little bit more about you from like the beginning. Because from what I understand, your dad had a restaurant. And so I'd love to learn, like, it was a deli that he had? Did you work there? Or?
Yeah, I worked there when I was a kid. I always enjoyed being around it. And then once I was kind of old enough to like manage a knife, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, he taught me how to cut an onion. My first cut was there, and it was cutting an onion. Like I still have like an indent in my thumb. But yeah, I always enjoyed being around it. So, and I saw his workers have fun. Now that's just what I saw. Now there's obviously more in-depth stories and problems throughout the years, right? Like any restaurant or deli, but like I always saw them get along and have fun, and I had fun being around it. And that's why I kind of chose to go down this path. Like, might as well have fun what you do, what you love. So.
What kind of, I mean, when you say deli, is this like Cat's Deli, or is this like literally like slicing turkey on a?
Well, it was a Jewish delicatessen in South Shore, Massachusetts.
What was it called?
It was called Ed's Poultry Farm Kitchen. So it was actually my grandfather's before that. And my grandfather's name is Ed, and he had a chicken farm. And my dad, when he was a kid, he delivered eggs. So it's kind of funny, like he was the egg man. He delivered eggs to my mom. Yeah, cuckoo.
That's how he met your mom?
Yeah. Well, they grew up and went to high school together and everything, but he literally delivered eggs. They sold manure. It was more like a country store back in the 50s, 60s. And when my dad took it over and bought it from my grandfather, he turned it into a Jewish delicatessen. So, whether it be sandwiches, sliced meats, pastrami, tongue sandwiches, that sort of thing. He did breakfast and lunch, catering. a lot of rotisserie chickens, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
it wasn't kosher, but there was just a large Jewish community in
Yep.
South Shore, Massachusetts, Sharon and Stoughton and Brockton.
Yeah. What's the place? Zaftig's. Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
The one in Brookline?
Yeah.
I used to visit my sister lives in Boston. I used to go there a lot. I mean, your dad wasn't a chef, right? And he starts a deli, he starts doing all these things.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. Like I was interviewing this, I think I might have just said this story, but it still keeps coming up in my mind. I was interviewing the owners of this insanely delicious ice cream shop. They've since left the ice cream shop. It's still around, called Ample Hills. And this guy, Brian, he's working on this new concept, and he was making these like chicken burgers for me. They were so fucking delicious. And it's, you know what, it amazes me. Like we come up in these fine dining restaurants. We work for years and years learning all these techniques. And it seems like, the biggest proponent of like what drives like just making good food is necessity and curiosity. Like your dad obviously wasn't a chef, but he created this, deli that you learned from, that I'm assuming that food was pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I still remember, like he, to this day, never says he was ever a chef, but he was a cook, and he managed and he owned, but like, man, he made some delicious gravy and like chicken noodle soup or chicken salad. Like that's what I remember in like his rotisserie chickens, but it's like, it was kind of soulful, right? It was simple, soulful. It was delicious. I remember as a kid when we would go to, New Hampshire or Maine to go skiing, like he would bump into people and they would know the deli. It was kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, for what he did, it was good.
It's awesome. What do you think was your biggest takeaway that you still sort of like implement today with how you cook, or at least or how you run a business? Or
well, I mean, he definitely instilled in me to try to be my own boss or be my own, or to be an owner. It just took forever because I mean, I always felt like there was always more to learn, right? From a young age, I mean, I try to remember back then just to try to have fun, which is hard sometimes because it's the restaurant industry is stressful, and it's like, so, but you have to be, humbled and realize that it's like, you're not cooking for yourself, you're cooking for others. And it's like, you have to kind of like give them the substance and something delicious, right? And it could be simple, very simple.
Yeah. It is really hard to like figure out a balance of having fun when you have all the stress, especially if you're at a restaurant that's going to be reviewed or is going to, is up for another review or could lose a Michelin star or could get,
Sure.
There's so much stress there, and it's so personal, when you have a team that's executing your food, it's a representation of you. It is really hard to like balance. How do you have fun and also make sure that everybody's doing the thing that you need them to do? It's such a part of representing who you are. How do you like figure out ways to have fun? I mean, you're just opening another restaurant. You got a whole team.
Yeah.
Like, how do you figure out ways to have fun when it's such a high stress situation?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I guess, an ongoing challenge, right? But I mean, you kind of you have to take a deep breath. You have to remember things of the past. I mean, it definitely helps. Like the last 2 weeks, what helps is seeing the guests and how they're enjoying things or interacting with them. Or what helps me too is having a young cook and being able to show them product or a technique and having them understand it, or having them just be genuinely like enthused or happy or like engaged, right? Like that stuff helps, And sure, like you come across a cook that comes by and you can be chummy or joke around a little bit, but I think it lasts a lot more and it's so much more meaningful when I can see the impact on someone. And that's what I've found throughout my career is what kind of makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I think we all need a release outside of work too, to have that balance, life work balance. So it took me a long time to find that. And like, some of my past mentors, like Laurent Gras told me, when we were doing L2O, because I was super stressed and I lost a bunch of weight, like, and I was just working my ass off. And like, he could tell, he's like, you need like a sport. And I was like, okay, great. Like, when do I have time to do that? It's like, I'm already working 14, 15 hours. Like I looked into it, but it's like, it's hard to
What did he say? Did you ask him when do I have time to do that?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's like, you need to make time. Like, you're off Tuesdays. I was like, okay, well, I like to ice skate and play hockey. There's not a pickup league that does that on those days,
Yeah.
But it does help. And like, you know, during COVID, my wife got me into cycling, and you can kind of do that anytime. There's a couple other things, or it's just like, walking the dog, or like going to the art museum or something like this, right?
Yeah.
Like something else. And when you have that too, you can always, and you can also get inspired.
That's right. Yeah.
You could drive yourself crazy by trying to think of an idea, but when you actually release and you just plant the idea in the back of your head, subconsciously, like, things will come out when you're relaxed too.
That's right. Yeah.
Reading, or like trying to read different books than just cookbooks, right? But like non-industry books, or some are more about leadership. Some, like, one is called Borrowing Brilliance, right? Like, I got a lot from that. Like, it's okay that like everything's kind of been done, but how do you take something from another field or another chef and make it your own a little bit, right? And be honest about it. So it's like it's okay. Like, it's not totally imposter syndrome. So sorry, I might be going all around.
No, I totally agree, man. It's, the fun part's important. That's my hardest part, is actually trying to find ways to have fun. I mean, I love what I do. So there's that, but you also, as a creator, as someone who's creative, you have to have these sort of juxtaposed things that you do, because that actually, I think, is what sparks the most like unique creativity. I think about, like, Benjamin Franklin created the juntos when he was, back in the day, that would like bring all these different types of disciplines together, a scientist and a mathematician and and an artist and new ideas. That's how they would kind of get sparked, is because you have these opposing, not opposing, but like different mediums coming together.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make something unique that's yours, that's your food, and all you ever do is work for Laurent Gras and work for Michael and work for, for these chefs, then you will, lots of people have done that. They might have done as many of you as you have, but it's whatever your unique sort of background is, and then all the other things that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
I think we forget about that sometimes, especially as chefs, because it's so sort of myopically like, just work 100 hours, do this for 20 years. And, and you forget that, like, the thing that actually makes your food really exciting is the things that you bring to it outside of that.
Yeah. I mean, well, meanwhile, as much as I learned from working for, Michael Tusk or Laurent Gras or Joshua Skeens or Paul Liebrandt, I'm continually learning from even like my past cooks, right, that have moved on. And, one of my my pastry sous is the executive pastry chef at Cyrus and works for Douglas Keane, and it's like, I'm so impressed with what Josh is doing there. And like, I've actually chatted with Douglas Keane, and he's so proud of him. And like, we've talked on the side before we've ever met. Now we've met, but he was such an open book person. And he was like, hey, when I thought about Cyrus 2.0, I thought about X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, do you have time to talk more? Because I could get some ideas of like how we can move camaraderie and think about camaraderie differently, right? Because there's a lot of great things that I got from all these fine dining restaurants, but there's a lot that I didn't love about some of them, right? And we have to think about things differently. But you continually learn, and that's what I love about the industry, is that like, it's so supportive and collaborative, and you mentioned, Alex, and Alex Stupak, and even when he was at WD50, I was blown away by one of his desserts. And like, he came over to Corton after I asked him out, he's like, oh, it's so low tech. Like, I just did X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, it was good,
Yeah.
and it was impressive. And some of the things are just super simple. You just don't realize until you kind of do it and you put yourself in the shoes. But, whether it be, Alex, Stupak, or Michael Lascanis, or like other chefs like Gavin Kaysen or Justin Cogley, I've had such a great experience with their kindness and generosity and the amount that they're willing to share, and just to help others, in the industry move forward. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes us all better, man.
Yeah, exactly. So David Kinch, super inspiring. And like, when he came to New York and I was there, like, all of a sudden I'm having a drink with him at late night, and he was just the most passionate person ever. Well, that rubs off on people. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like the fun enjoyment about camaraderie, is I want to be that spark to other people. and when we get in good product, hit the pause button and be like, hey, you all need to check this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that needs to happen more often. It happened earlier in my career, that chefs would do that. And it's long lasting, right? So remembering that, kind of hitting the pause button every once in a while, it's great.
Yeah. Do you remember like the first time? Well, let me step back. Like, when you start to sort of grow to higher sort of ranking positions in kitchens, right? Sous chefs and CDC, most of the time you're kind of executing on Tusk's vision or Laurent's vision. And it's not that it's, rote, but it is sort of like through the lens of them, when you're creating the whatever new dishes or specials and things like that. Do you remember like the first time that you created something that was uniquely like, this is my dish. This is like uniquely my vision, my like thought process, my approach, independent of, not obviously nothing is ever independent of other influences. But when you create a dish at Catonia, right, it has to be in the vein of Catonia. It can't just be some. Do you remember the first time you created something that was like uniquely Shawn's?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because I've always I took pride in trying to make desserts or dishes that were cohesive with the restaurant. And there's some restaurants that I definitely, I guess, mesh and gel with a little bit more.
Which ones?
Well, I mean, and it might be the time period too, right? Where certainly the first time I was creating on my own was when I was at Veritas, and that was a learning process. And Gregory Pujan, who was there, gave me a lot of freedom, and I kind of mess around and doing good food. But like when I look back, I'm like, oh, some of it's silly, and it was a growing process, right? But then when I went to Corton, I think I really gelled with Paul and his food, his style. Like it was jiving. There was a time period at Corton when they had the prefit or their a la carte, the entree, you'd get like a small little piece of rabbit, but you'd get 4 sides to go with it. You get a rabbit sausage and this and that. Well, like I tried to mimic that with some of the desserts where like I did a dessert and I had like 2 or 3 sides, and that was kind of challenging but fun. And then as my time evolved at Corton, like some of the flavors and the flavor profile and the style, I just, really loved, like working with black sesame and yuzu and some of these liquid nitrogen type things. But then a few years pass and I'm doing extremely simple and 1 or 2 or 3 ingredient desserts at Saison. That really spoke to me, right? And that was extremely challenging. So it's tricky to say, and as time goes on and you grow as a chef too, it's like, it changes a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully you're always sort of at the right place at the right time in your career.
I think those two, and they were back to back, but those restaurants were so different too. And do I use a whole bunch of hydrochlorides now? Like there's a couple, but not nearly as many. And I've got a bunch of people that ask me about using them. And it's like, I like to step away from it more, because the more of that you use, the less tasty things are sometimes, right?
It's definitely hard to bridge it. Yeah. It is great that you have them in your toolbox, because your young cooks that come up, maybe they want to try something out. And if it can still fit within the realm of, camaraderie, but they're like, hey, I really want to learn how to use, these the sodium, the things that make the little balls or something like that. You can teach them how, right? And it might be a throwaway, right? It might be like, this would never stay in the menu, but then they learn, and then they can learn from you, and kind of, helps them along the way.
Yeah.
So funny you worked at Veritas, by the way. I remember 2003, Scott Bryant was the chef there.
Yep.
And it's actually a big part of the story of how Mies happened, because I was working for Floyd at Tabla, and I would like work for free for Mario making salumi. And I had, like we all have little notebooks, and I left my fucking notebook at Veritas with all of the charcuterie recipes, like literally like 100 of them, all the detail. And anytime I think of Veritas, all I think about is that fucking notebook that I lost there, that I never really got those recipes back. Yeah. And there was no recipes for them. They just had to sort of like write things down.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Scott Bryant's making some charcuterie nowadays. But
I doubt that.
He had a really good thing going too. And, unfortunately I didn't work for him, but yeah, that was kind of a crazy period in time. But that was the first time that I was given like the real freedom to kind of do what I wanted. And I don't know if my food really like absolutely replicated Gregory's as much, even though I tried a little bit, but it was because I was young and I was trying stuff out. But he was so supportive, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So can you walk me through, you were doing Savory for a while, and then I think at LTO is when you sort of asked Laurent, like, hey, can I try out pastry? What was happening then? And then what was that transition like?
yeah. So I worked with Laurent at Bistro Devant. We met years before when he was a guest chef at True, and he got brought back to do a tasting at True or for Rich Melman at Let Us Entertain You. One of the cooks that I worked with, left True and worked from the fifth floor, and I was still at True, one of the very few people that were still there. So he kind of remembered me. But when I was at Bistro Devant, he gave me a lot of pastry jobs to work on. We talked through the recipes. They were built from percentages and precise and techniques and stuff. And I had a great deal of respect because he had so much balance and he knew so much pastry, right? And a couple other chefs, early in my career, had similar. So when we were closing Bistro Devant, I mentioned I wanted to just get into pastry right then for like a year or two, and then work for him again.
Yeah.
I staged at Payard, and I was close to accepting a job, but I don't think I could have afford to live. I really wanted to work for Michael Lascanis, and
Does the Le Bernardin?
yeah, at Le Bernardin. And it didn't work out. I think maybe he didn't have room on his team at the time. And I kind of nudged Laurent because he knew Michael and Eric Repair very well, but like didn't, just didn't work out. But then at that time, the main opening in New York was Joel Robuchon. So I went for that and opened Joel Robuchon. I did all the meat and fish butchery, but I kept in touch with Laurent. We would get coffee and talk, and he was close to opening up something in New York and it fell through. And then he ended up doing Chicago and L2O. So we had through our talks, we decided, or he decided, he wasn't going to have a pastry chef, that like the sous chefs can manage it and all that. I
You think that was like a budget decision, or just like philosophically he didn't want to have one?
Maybe a little bit of both, but also he wanted to get the cooks trained in both too. So he wanted the cooks to rotate through and make the team strong that way. And because he wanted to kind of teach them that it was all technique driven. And the way his recipes are built, even savory wise, they're very exact and they're very percentage and methodical, that it's kind of an easy transition to do either, right? It's just, you're just working with some different ingredients.
Yeah.
So he knew that I wanted to do pastry, but I didn't get into it. But I didn't know I was going to do pastry at L2O until I moved there and met with him. And then he was like, oh, so we're not going to have a pastry chef. So, but you're going to be in charge of it. And I was like, oh, so that's kind of how it went. He knew I was interested, but I really only had the idea to do it for a couple of years, like really submerge myself into it and then get back out. But yeah, but it's like I said earlier, it was just extremely humbling.
Did it feel like a transition, or does it feel? It sounds like it felt just like working Savory, and you just working with different ingredients. I mean, I always think about you go into the pastry station, they yell at you. There,
Yeah.
It's a whole other world, typically, or at least it can be.
Yep. I mean, I never thought I had the patience for it. When I was in culinary school, there's no way. I didn't have the patience for it. But I think, over time, you grew to have those patience and the way you work. There was definitely a learning curve, especially when it comes to like multitasking. Like when you get thrown into being 100% pastry and you're used to multitasking a lot and doing 4 or 5 things at once.
Yeah.
You can't do that in pastry. If you mess up, you lose hours and hours of your day. And the other part too is that like all of a sudden I was managing, 6 or 7 people at a very high level at a very, very, stressful opening, and 1, maybe 2 had pastry experience. And that wasn't me,
Yeah.
So that was also hard. It was helpful to have the 1 or 2 that did have pastry experience, but that was definitely challenging.
Yeah. Your background is in so many, like, not only so many different restaurants, but you also in like a ton of different cities that you've worked in: Chicago, Philly, New York, San Francisco, Boston, not Houston. What what are sort of some things you've noticed about the difference of whether it's the culture or the actual kitchens from different cities? Is there one that stands out as in any particular way for being completely different from other cities, or does it feel the same across all the cities? I mean, I spent all my time in New York, so
Yeah.
I'm so interested to hear like how different it is across all the cities.
I think, Philly, like the Philly, New York, Boston, and Chicago were kind of similar. It was eye opening when I went to San Francisco. Just the pace was just everyone had a deep breath. Everyone, like, even though that we were busy, it just seemed like everyone had a slower pace. Like there was windows, you saw the sunlight. It was like you went outside, you picked herbs. It was just like a whole new world, which is also very attractive to me after, living and working in New York for so long. It was like, man, I have an opportunity to try this out. Like, this is pretty rad. Like the product's amazing. Like I say, like natural light is insane. Like after working in basements and
Yeah.
in New York and all sorts of things. So the culture was definitely different. You know,
Natural
but
light's is a big deal. I remember we got a lot of slack for at Cafe Gray at the Time Warner building. It's like
yep,
we actually had the best view in the entire
yeah,
restaurant, and the guests were basically looking at the kitchen. We were looking at at Central Park, and man, it did like every day you walk in and you feel like it's more than just work. You're kind of like looking at this beautiful scenery as you go.
yeah. So yeah, I think San Francisco was just different than the community, but it was also very welcoming. It didn't take long for me to get to know everyone in that city, and everyone just being so passionate and jiving. And you see everyone at the market, and people go out of their way to drive 40 minutes to a better market on Thursdays or Sundays. And it's like, it was awesome. It was like the best part was that drive, out to Marin, and
Yeah.
San Rafael and driving back. It was like, man, that made my day.
Is San Francisco to you of all those cities the tightest knit of a restaurant community?
Uh, Possibly. Yeah. I mean, like Chicago also was pretty tight knit. Like you're there long enough. Like, and New York has their niches too. It's just there's so many restaurants
It's pockets.
go
Yeah.
in pockets, right? But you
Yeah.
get to know people pretty quickly, and some of my better friends to this day, like I try explaining to like my wife who's not in the industry, like, how I know Carl. And it was like, well, Carl worked with a buddy of mine, Danielle, and we got, mad for chicken at 2 a.m. And then that next thing we're celebrating Thanksgiving together, and we're friends, 15 years later.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I guess that's, why I wanted to name my first restaurant Camaraderie too. It's like these are connections you make, whether if you're working in the trenches with someone or, it's a friend of a friend and you can connect and relate,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
It really is. I think the camaraderie really is prevalent so much more, I think, in restaurants and specifically in kitchens because we're kind of all going to war together, you
Yeah.
know? And I don't know. I haven't been in kitchens in a while, so I don't know how much it's changed. But it was, you got 18-hour days, 6 days a week, and it's sort of nonstop all the time. It does feel like you're kind of in the trenches with these folks, and it creates this sort of close, this bond that I don't know where else you find other than obviously in similar, like really sort of tense or tough situations like that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. There's people I haven't talked to in years, but then when we do, you pick up just where you left off, which is amazing, right? Because you have that history and that bond. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's interesting is camaraderie, how do you emulate that without those same terrible conditions?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, that took a lot of thought. So, there's little things that we're trying to do and trying to implement, whether it just be a 4-day work week or trying to, bridge the gap in the pay scale or have it be a real educational driven, restaurant, I mean, that's what kind of makes me happy is is educating and teaching people and being a mentor to others, or like people have been a mentor to me.
Yeah.
So, those things, is it all, peaches and cream and, everything's, sunshines and lollipops? Like, no, but, we're working to get there and trying to like, level and reason with people and explain why we do certain things, and try to build in things for myself and the rest of the management team to be like, okay, we're going to take a walk, or we're going to try to work on communicating. And so that way it isn't like all those other crazy restaurants and old school and, the shit rolls downhill type stuff, and
Yeah.
try to be like, okay, like if they're not succeeding at something, well, I look at myself first, right? Did I give them the tools to succeed? Did I explain it properly? Did I do this? And then it's like, okay, well then I can do better, right? But yeah, I mean, hopefully we're trying to put ourselves in their shoes, and how can we think about the restaurant so it can be a sustainable career again, right? So, whether it be health insurance, paid time off, 401k, these things. We've been open for 2 weeks. So, honestly, we don't have our staff on health insurance. It's almost impossible to get them on from day one. You kind of have to open,
Yeah.
have a number, which is, kind of sucks, but we have a broker that's going to meet with us soon. And, it's important, but
Yeah. You got to start from the beginning with it too, because it's basically impossible to do it once you're like 3-4 years in to like change and have everybody on healthcare now, and because it's a different model. It's amazing to see it happening now.
yeah, I mean, 401k, it's like I only got 401k when I worked at some hotels and most recently, but the cost for the restaurant, there's actually perks out there that like covers most of the cost for the first 3 years. And there's minimal like monthly costs, but it's not obnoxious. And I think not just offering it, but educating people too, that is like, hey, you're in your 20s, put, $10, $20 away, or whatever it is. It can be a very small percentage, but after some time, like it's gonna, but they don't realize because they're used to working paycheck to paycheck, but if you educate them, like, yeah, you put away $25 pre-tax, it doesn't cost you $25, or whatever it may be. So, but I think like there's such a big discrepancy in the education aspect of finances and budgeting, whether it be personal or business related, um, that it'd be helpful just to be able to like have a meeting every once in a while, kind of go over things or answer. It's like people have goals, and it's like, okay, well, I've gotten help along my way of people knowing things that I don't. Well, then how can I pay it forward to others and tell them like troubleshoot what went wrong with me, and also like what maybe they didn't think about X, Y, or Z, right? But also just like I said, like personal budgeting. There's such a discrepancy in the wealth gap where it's like, okay, people deserve to get paid more, but there's also like $1 more an hour only goes a certain amount per week, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, even when we were making $10-15 an hour, less, you still, no matter what. I mean, I wish I had known back then to just put, a tiny. You don't have to put much. Put $10 a month. If you start it when you're 20, it adds up, and we just didn't know.
Well, and it's it's kind of like the cup of coffee motto, right? Where if you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts every day, right, you spend $3 or $4 a day, and throughout the course of the month, what is that? Well, if you could be saving that a month, and you can make coffee at home for a fraction of the price, right? And yeah, maybe you treat yourself to that latte once a week or whatever, but like, yeah, that's $100 a month or more. Like, I mean, it's more,
Yeah, no, it adds up for sure.
Those little changes that people get used to is like that. Not to say that I don't want to pay someone another dollar an hour, but like the bigger factor is some of these other habits that they could also do. And then on my end, I'm trying to do things differently so I can pay people a little bit more quality of life.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the opening for a minute. Well, more than a minute. First of all, what do you think was like the biggest worry you had that turned out to be like a nothing burger?
Oh, I mean, I'm doing a prefix menu, and no one's doing it in Houston right now. And it's not the first time anyone's done it, but like no one's doing it in Houston. And I was worried that people weren't going to see the value, or that people might see it as expensive, right? That it's
Uh-huh.
$5 per person. You're getting 4 shared, apps. You pick your entree and there's a choice of dessert. And I was worried that, some people might seem expensive because they used to go in a la carte restaurants. It's either a la carte restaurants and you see the prices, $20, $30, plates, or there's a couple of tasting menu restaurants that are like way more expensive for the whole experience. But everyone's been overwhelmed with how much they see it as a value, which is great and a big relief. Uh, I kind of wanted to, that was my passion, is to do this style of menu and kind of bridge the gap between the fine dining tasting menus I've worked at and the more casual. With the space, I've found it necessary to do a small a la carte menu in the bar lounge, and
Yeah.
and that also gives people more choices. I was worried that they weren't going to have enough choices.
Yeah.
The choice of the entree is only 3 or 4. It's literally it's one meat, one fish, a vegetarian, and then I have a large format, which right now is another fish dish. So it's not a lot of choices, but people seem like they're just enjoying it. Great. Yeah.
What was there anything that went like a big curveball that went wrong that you didn't expect would go wrong?
I think there was a lot of little things, right? That all kind of came together at the end. We had, some issue the first week with our makeup air. It was like, and like you need AC and good temperature in restaurants, especially in Houston. And, we get to the bottom of it, like electrician, like, crossed the wires the wrong way or something. It was going backwards. But yeah, I mean, but for service wise, I'm not sure. Like it's been better than I expected,
Oh,
which is,
that's good.
yeah,
How do you feel about the team?
I think the team's great. We've got a mixture of people. We really try to take a lot of time to hire team players, and
How
you
do
know,
you filter for that?
well, that's the tricky thing, is like I try to have conversations with people like we are now, try to get to know them, try to get to know what makes them tick. I looked for people that were hungry, humble, and smart. Ultimately doesn't matter what they've done in the past. I kept reminding myself, like, what do they want to do in the future? What do they want to learn? And there's a few people that have some good experience. There's some people that have very little. But one guy worked at a place shucking oysters, and then his next restaurant was mainly making like po' boys and sandwiches. But he loved making sandwich, like he loved it. And I was like, man, I love a good sandwich. Like it's good. And he was able to do a sandwich special at this bar restaurant he was working at, and he explained the special to me in
Yeah.
detail. And I was like, you know what? Like,
Yeah.
you're all right, like, and he wants to learn. So it's like, okay, great. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out, and you can't filter it all. But we had multiple conversations with them. But what I was afraid of when I was opening was that as much as I care and I put in time to hire these people and I care about them, that, I'm going to be disappointed. And what I mean is, like, when someone doesn't follow through and meet the values that I thought they were
Yeah.
going to, right? And, unfortunately, that just happened too, where the trust was broken, or respect wasn't there. And, I had to part ways with someone already. And it's not something I take lightly,
Yeah.
and it was unfortunate, but it is better to move on and kind of say that, like, it's not a good fit, and that, like, that broke my trust. And like, I need trust as a foundation, so foundation piece. So,
Is there like now thinking back, like in retrospect, was there anything that you can think of as like a pattern that you could now look for or ask a question about, or sort of lead them to see where someone else might have the propensity to break your trust? It sounds like the person probably had a good interview, but was there anything that you could think of now, looking back, that may have caused that?
Yeah, I mean, well, so they maybe had a good interview, and then even at the time, sometimes you can kind of see through the person, but unfortunately, we're also have our hands tied where like we also need to fill the position too.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it would have been nice to, in retrospect, maybe I would have just said like, you know what, I'm going to wait right now, and it might be harder at the beginning, but try to wait for the right person to come along, right? Because
yeah,
there was still some reservations, right? And in the dining room staff too, like we were like, maybe had some reservation about someone, but was like, well, they deserve a shot. Like we're gonna be, we're gonna watch out for this and see if we can work with them, because everyone needs, chances. And then when someone doesn't work out and we need to hire again, it's better to wait. Like I think that's what we learned even, at the beginning. It was like, yeah, it'd be great to just get a body in, but it's like, be better to have the team work a little bit harder, and we wait a week or two until we have the right person come along.
yeah. It's so hard, man, because you have to communicate that really well to the team, and the team has to be, in it, because it's one of these. In the restaurants are pretty unique in that you not having that body is really tough, right? Everybody else is going to be working a lot extra. I mean, if you don't have a marketing person, no offense to marketers, they're great, but like you're going to get by. You can open tomorrow, but if your meat cook isn't there, then someone else is working extra, and also service might be slower.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of, you can have the potential resentment because someone's like, now I'm working more, and the team has to really be behind it.
Yeah. I think, being open with them, and we've tried to do that and explain like, hey, it might be tough for a couple weeks, but we'd rather bring on the right person. Because when you bring in the wrong person, they can be a complete cancer, and it'd be even worse than them just working a little bit harder now. And I've learned that people understand that and respect that, right? It does get tricky when we have such a small restaurant and small staff. When lose someone, it's a larger percentage of your staff to make up, right? So it becomes challenging. We have to be smart about it and divvy up the workload a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the staff in general understands why, and I think it makes them feel. I think it makes them feel good that they're part of the team too. Like, that like I care about who I bring on. That I'm not just going to bring on anyone. It ultimately makes them feel special, which they should.
Yeah, yeah. And the flip side is when it's a small team. Let's say you have 10 people, and 2 of them are like dragging or like breaking trust. That's 20% of your company.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so the smaller the team, the more every single person needs to really be driving.
Yeah.
Value.
I mean, the idea is that, with the small team, hopefully you can, or me and my management can find the ones that don't fit, and you have a team of 30 or 40, it's easy for a couple people to like kind of hide under the radar and then slowly, like turn others into bad apples and that sort of thing. Right. But like if we have a small team, we have a little more one-on-one with everyone as well. And I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah. How do you approach collaboration? I mean, you have an enormous amount of experience and skill. I think rightly so. You're hiring for, curiosity, diligence, people that like really care, which oftentimes can mean not a ton of experience in the kitchen. I imagine still collaboration is important when you're putting out new dishes. How do you approach that now with your restaurant as opposed to what you would do, say, back in the day at Quince or another place you were running?
I think it's just important that they see that they see that I'm human, that I make mistakes. I'm honest with them that I make mistakes. And that's not a direct correlation with collaboration, but I think showing them that it's like, hey, when I have you taste something, like I want your honest feedback. I think that's what I'm getting at, right? Because I need that, because I try to taste and I'm always trying to think of what it needs or what it doesn't need to make it better. And I think if my cooks see me tasting with my general manager or my sous chef and getting honest feedback and like make tweaks, I think that goes a long way with allowing collaboration and knowing that it's okay to speak freely and to give an opinion when it's the right time, right? And then collaboration will grow from there. And when I ask them like, hey, what do you think about this? Or we're getting this product in, and I might have an idea in the back, but I want to give them an opportunity. It resonates a bit more because they've already seen that there's a consistency with how I work, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just about like, this is what we're going to do and there's no questions and this is it, right? That like we taste together. There's all those little things add up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something I took away from Wiley years ago. He said something that really stuck with me. Because I asked him sort of like, how do you create this sort of environment of creativity? I mean, all of that stuff coming out of WD wasn't just him, like there's a lot of people. And I love what he like immediately he said, you got to create an environment where it's okay to talk shit to the chef. And I think that really, just speaks to like that freedom that like anybody feels like their opinion matters. And sometimes it's harder than just telling people that, especially when you're the boss, right? Basically everything stops with you as the chef, or you're the CEO, whatever. And,
Yeah.
I find often just inadvertently people feel like when you say something, that's it. That's the gospel and that's what goes. And you have to sort of almost like proactively tell them like, hey, this is what I think. What do you,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes I don't tell them what I think. And I want like, and maybe that helps too, is like, okay, no, but really think on your own. What does this do for you? Like, does this dish make you happy? Does this flavor make you happy? Or like, how can we make it better? There's no perfect, but can we get close and we can get exceptional,
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. You have to create that environment from the beginning. Let them know it's okay.
What do you do when you don't like? So someone's putting something up, and you're not going to tell them what you think, but then you're like, I can't serve
Yeah.
this. What do you do?
I mean, that's hard sometimes, so, if it's kind of a complete dish, kind of going backwards and be like, okay, well, what was your thought process on it? And let's think about like, what are the goals of the dish, right? Um, One, sometimes I'm just very honest and be like, yes, this is cool. This doesn't match the restaurant where we're at, whether it be Camaraderie or a previous restaurant, right? But let's keep thinking about this. Maybe we can use some components. But sometimes, like when it's really bad, I kind of talk about like what they're thinking, what they want to start with, or what their goal, and kind of like break it down and kind of strip it away a little bit, and then try to build it back up. And like there hopefully there's some type of positive you can take from each, or something, right? So you can kind of like not totally crush their souls.
Yeah,
you
I have
know
to be better at that. It's
right.
hard. It's hard.
Well, I mean, I've definitely crushed some souls in my time, and it's not great, and you kind of see that in them, and it's like, okay, well, how can I do this a little softer? Right.
Yeah,
um
and it's more of a reflection of us. I beat myself up over because I have a hard time with that. And like when something is presented, and I'm not obviously at this point I'm not talking about food because I have another company, but like
yeah.
my immediate reaction is to talk about what isn't right about it.
Yeah.
And that it takes a lot more effort to find out what is right about it, or just asking like, hey, what were you thinking when you were working on this, without coming across like a dick.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, trust me, I still have that issue and problem that I'm working through, is like I can't control my face sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
And then also, I'm very blunt and very honest and very straightforward, and that can resonate with some people, and some others can be quite taken aback. So, learning who you can do that with and who needs to be talked to a little bit softer, and kind of break down, what they're thinking. And then, learning too in the future, when you give people an opportunity to put up a dish, try to give them some type of guideline too, without, handcuffing them a bit, right? Because that's sometimes hard too. Talking through what their idea is before they put it down on a plate to make sure that they're a little bit more on track helps, right?
Yeah. What are you most excited about right now on the menu?
Changing it. uh, Yeah, I've been open for 2 weeks, but I mean, we're starting to get spring product in. So it's like, it's tricky where it's like, we need to keep the menu the same a little bit because, people are excited about certain things. We have a salt baked soy root dish that's getting like raved about, or like a couple of the pasta dishes, the ravioli duffine. People are freaking over, but like, I really want to build the environment, the culture that like we're changing a little bit here and there. Uh, and then that way also like the cooks don't end up feeling like they're just a short order cook, that the menu is the same for months and they're only doing the same things, right? I want to be able to get in, rhubarb, green garlic, or last week we got in ramps, and get people excited about the food, but also just like, okay, well, we have this. It's great.
Yeah.
We're going to have ramps for 3 or 4 weeks. We should use them,
Are there ramps in Houston?
Yeah, I got them Saturday. So, I mean, they're not from Houston. Like, I'm pretty sure they're probably from California or Oregon. I was told that the ones I got California, but
Yeah.
but we just got ramps in. There's green garlic. It's like, okay, I'm doing this bread that people love. That's great, but I want to have people trust me that they'll come back, and I won't have the purple sweet potato panelé, but the next bread is going to be just as delicious and exciting, right? Like maybe I'll have a green garlic knot, like a garlic knot, but with green garlic or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's small little changes excite me. I'm
That just takes
happy.
time, right? Just
Yeah.
like people seeing it over time.
Well, and it's been a push to like keep up with the menu and have team, and how busy we are, which is great. And it's a great problem to have. But now I'm kind of excited to like take a step back and start thinking about like, okay, what fish, what produce is coming in, what changes can we make for the week, and try to instill that. Because some restaurants, once they get going, it becomes really hard to change any menu item, right? It becomes it's just challenging, or there's too many systems in place, and there's the staff gets overwhelmed with changing because it's just not instilled in the culture of the environment. So I want to try to get on that right away, so it's not a big deal. It's like, okay, you're going to come in and like, we're going to change this now, and we're going to talk through it and do it, and we'll have this for a week or two, right? So I think that's exciting to me. Is that hopefully we can start doing.
Yeah. I find also like it's easy to get stuck in sort of too formulaic of a menu change too, because like you got the, whatever, the salt crusted or the tapioca crusted sea bass, and there's a pepperod with it and this jus. And then the next iteration is they just swap the fish, maybe swap tapioca for a different grain, and they like swap the pepperod for something similar. And it's basically the same rinse and repeat, but it's hard to break out of that mold once you get going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and yeah, I've been places that do that, and it's like, no, I want to try to swap a whole dish, right? And maybe simplify that process. And the things that work in the pre-feed that like people love, hopefully we can just put in the bar lounge menu and keep it around. So that's kind of the idea. Like I'm excited about some of the stuff that we have in the bar lounge menu. Like the tart flambe is coming out really nice, very like traditional, very thin, very like elegant. And like I'd like to keep that around, but at the same time, I don't want to be beholden to always having a tart flambe or like, previously I did a focaccia de recco because I loved Nancy Silverton's so much at Key Spacca. So I tried to make, that, and it was a hit. It was the top P mix at the restaurant I was at previously. And it's still on the menu to this day, which is great. But like, I'd love to be able to like take it off, but then have it around if someone says like, oh, you don't have this. And then you can send it out to them as like a nice surprise, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
So
what do ramps cost around you these days in Houston?
About $30 a pound, maybe a little more.
Dude, I moved to Westchester a while, actually now it's like almost 8 years ago, and they're everywhere.
Yeah,
and we have we have some in our backyard. I mean, we have morels in our front yard, and then a buddy of mine lives a couple blocks down the road. He doesn't even know what ramps are, and he must have 100 pounds of ramps on his property. And they're literally just like everywhere. And I'm like, what if this has to be a business model? Everybody's got this, and they just, unfortunately, they all just sort of wilt and die. Like nobody's even using them.
All right, well, I'll give you my address.
I do send them to people, or like I'll actually ship them to a buddy of mine down in Charleston.
Yeah.
And then I'll just make some like whatever ramp butter or something and send them. But
Yeah.
I don't have time, but like someone needs to do something about that.
Yeah. They're pricey, but man, they're worth it. And I'm just trying to feature the whole product, and hopefully people enjoy them.
Do you pickle the bulbs, or do you braise them?
I mean, I will if I need to. I'm trying to just do a dish where it's literally just braised ramps and some cheesy blend or cheesy grit.
Yeah. Braised ramps are so good.
Then if I need to, I'll use them whichever way. But some people get them in right away and just start pickling. But I'd like to just try to get through what I have.
Yeah. I have nightmares of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of pickled ramps with Kuntz. And then you just have all these greens that you're like, what, how many,
Yeah.
How much puree can you make with, with all the greens?
Yeah.
Or what, I think we made pasta a couple times with it too. Anyways, well, I'm excited to see how the restaurant evolves. I'm actually going to be in Houston a couple times. We're going to do like a little like event with some of our customers and some new other restaurants in Houston. So I'm definitely going to come down.
Awesome.
For that, and we have like another like conference, so I'll be down there a couple times. So I'm stoked to come check it out. I've been doing this thing. Actually, it happened organically because a couple shows ago, Dan Kluger started telling me about the cookbooks that he loved. So I'm just going to ask, what are your top 5 cookbooks?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Grey Coons. I mean, the Elements of Taste is like up there. It's like,
really,
yeah, it's a classic. Chef Coons is amazing. And put me on the spot, like looking around. Flour and Water book is great. The Tartine book is awesome. Classic Jean-Louis Paladin, or the White Heat book by Marco Pierre White.
White Heat's great. Yeah,
inspiring. But yeah, Coons' book was great.
You like the Trotter books?
Yeah, I have a couple of the Trotter books. Great.
What about pastry wise? I haven't bought a lot of pastry books. I mean, some bread books, but like,
I have some bread books. One pastry book that I really liked was Chocolate.
Oh, that's a great one. Which one?
The one from Ramon Murado.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of explains why you add certain ingredients, which was great. Percentages, kind of like gets you thinking about, the sugar levels or whatever, maybe, and why you add things. Which a lot of the book was about chocolate, but then there's a whole section there's just about kind of ingredients, which is awesome. Really educational. So I think that would be my top pastry.
That's cool. What about top 5 pastry chefs of all time? I just thought about that.
I mean, from my taste, Michael Lascanas, Alex Stupak, Jordan Kahn, even though he's not pastry anymore,
Mm-hmm.
his pastries were amazing at Red Medicine. Man, those 3 come to mind right away. I'm longtime friends with Stephanie Prida. I think she's amazing, very talented, does things that I can't do. So I think she'd definitely be up there too.
Yeah.
And then there's others that you look up to or you emulate, like of course, like Albert Adria and others. Janice Wong from 2 a.m. Dessert, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I got 5 in there.
Yeah, that's enough. There you go. All right. Well, congrats again, man, on the restaurant, and I'm excited to. What days a week is it open?
Wednesday to Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so close Monday, Tuesday. We have plans on doing brunch. Have to think about logistics for that. So maybe in a month or 2.
Yeah, take your time on that one, man.
Yeah, I know. I actually don't. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had Sundays off, but I mean, the neighborhood we're in, it definitely, I think it will be good for brunch and for Sundays too. And, in some industry have Sundays off. So I think it would be a good thing. But
yeah, when you got a 2-month-old. So, you got to find some time. What is it, a boy or girl?
A girl. Yeah. So right now Mondays, and my wife's bringing her by the restaurant every day, which is really nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is she staying with the baby at the moment?
Yeah, she's on maternity leave, so she'll go back to work soon. But at the time she was staying with the baby, maternity leave. But right around family meal time, they make a little appearance for 20, 30 minutes. So
that's great.
Try to take a little walk, see her. It's really nice.
Yeah. Yep. The first 5 years, man, it goes by fast, and it's like the most precious and important time.
Yeah.
This was great, man. I appreciate it. And I know you're busy, but I'm glad we got some chance to chat.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.